Everybody, we're back in my workshop. This is a live one today. They've been recorded, obviously, the past 2 or 3 sessions. Back from the holes, refreshed, revitalised, all ready to do another batch of projects for you up until Christmas. If you remember, on Tuesday of this week, we were doing this root ball, this bit of cherry, which actually I'd done several weeks ago, but I've just been working on it this morning. I finished hollowing it out. We're nice and thin. We're probably down to about 2 to 3 mil, 2 mil in its thinnest places. So that's, of course, has opened up some holes there. So what I intend to do, I've done some light sanding on this. I haven't finished sanding, and I'm actually going to finish this off the lathe. There's all sorts of things going on here, which we're going to explain as we start going through this next project. First of all, let me introduce Finley again. He's back behind the camera. Finley is on a split today, and he's very kindly, in his 2-hour window between his split shifts, has come in to do this video. So I've got to thank him very, very much for doing that. He has to leave before the end, unfortunately, so there will be a spell of about 20 to 15 minutes at the end of this video where I won't see your questions. So I apologise for that, but we will get them all together, and I will answer them. We're going to be doing another Q&A session soon, so if I don't get to them personally, then we'll get them emailed to you anyway. So like I say, get your questions in early, basically. So let's have a recap. Cherry root ball. I've had a huge amount of issues this morning hollowing this one out. I've gone through, off camera just for a minute, I've gone through 4, well, I kept sharpening and coming back through 4 hollowing tools because it's full of stone, and I didn't know that until I started this morning. Probably not giving myself enough time to finish hollowing it out, but I've had to keep sharpening these 3 woodcut Proformers. Okay, my best hollowing tool. We've got an Axminster carbide tip one there. Now the carbide tip took the brunt of the stones because I didn't want to damage these too much, so I roughed it out with this one first, and then for finesse I used the woodcut. And between the two, they've worked really, really well. It's just been a long haul getting the inside of that one out. So I'm pleased to say that it is there now. We've got to that sort of classic natural hollow form sort of shape. This is going to be more a piece to look at than actually use. Whereas, let me just show you a couple others that I've roughed out. Ready to finish. So these are dry now. So a couple of things that I said that I wanted to talk to you about. So this is soaking wet. So like I said in the video on Tuesday, I got this only about a week before I turned it. It's a root ball from Axminster, and so soaking wet. It still is soaking wet. The shavings coming out are really, really wet. So you can see me finish this piece. We're just going to carry on. I would normally rough turn them and let them dry. Now this one's gone all shapes, as have all of my rough turn pots up there, and now I would be quite happy to finish this off, continue the hollowing. I've still got the foot on the bottom, do the outside sand, and it's fine. But I'm pretending with this one. I've gone straight from soaking wet, I've sanded it, which you know what it's like, wet timber doesn't sand very well. And what's going to happen with this piece now, once we finish this, I'm going to put some oil on it, or lather it in oil actually, and do some hand sanding as well, because it's not fully sanded. That will move, so it'll become a sculptural piece, and it will move depending on the timber, depending on where you put it. If you put it over a radiator, for instance, it'll pretty much go to pieces, it'll crack everywhere. So you want to dry them fairly quickly, but it will become, some can become really quite sculptural and really quite nice. If you want them true round, if you want them to hold their shape, rough turn first, let them dry about 6 months, and then you're good to go. Okay, so that's where we are. So let's pretend he's dry. We're now going to finish him, and what that involves is we're going to take some of this waste material down, because this bowl is actually good, or pot is going to finish probably about there, about an inch further down from where I've actually finished the shape at the moment. And if you remember, we didn't want to take it too thin before it was hollowed out, otherwise it's just not enough strength there. You get a huge amount of vibration and things like that. So we're going to carry on and do that now. Then we're going to flip it. We're going to use some of the waste material from here to make a little drive, and use the tailstock just to clean up that underside, and then we'll do a little bit of hand sanding, get some oil on it, and that'll be done. Okay, so we're just breaking that that hollow form down into 2 stages. If you've never done a hollow form before, don't start big, start small. Start with something. Let's just have a look at hollow forms. So we can start. There's a few. So there's a small, tall one. There's a slightly more dumpy one, and that shape, rather than something with a very small opening, start with something you can get into easily. It's easy to follow that contour there. It's not coming up over the top. These are great starting off, and also I like using these, making them and selling them as, I make a lot of leaning garlic pots or herb pots for the kitchen, and so I can come fully around and just sand a flat there, and they'll lean like that, and you've seen me do a couple of those. They lean like that, and they're actually a useful kitchen item. Or do something like these tall ones. These are vases, so these are for dried flowers, and a nice tall pot. And this is particularly nice because it's very, very rippled as well. I'll probably colour this one. But they're really nice as gifts, and they turn in, rather than something just to look at, they turn into functional pieces. And if you're going to sell pieces, they do go a lot quicker if you're going to make them functional and a useful gift. Right. So there's enough waffling. Let's start, and we're going to do our usual. We're going to get you up nice and close here. I'm going to go to a small tool rest. I'm going to go for my small robust. Get in nice and close, and then Finn, if you can just come in quite close with that and sort of slightly above, and people can see what I'm doing. We're going to go with a small bowl gouge here of 6mm, I think. It could go to 3/8. It doesn't really matter that much. I just like the control of that one. I'm going to wear my full visor, so my respirator basically, which is my APF 10. The reason I'm doing that is because it's a hollow form. It's very thin. There's lots of fissures in it, you know, all sorts of things can go wrong with one of these. If it explodes, I want to make sure that I've got the best possible chance of not getting injured. And a full face visor is the best chance.
There's a few comments just saying that the quality is quite poor today. It could be the bandwidth. Not sure. Sorry about that, everyone.
Yeah. Now, next week, I'm hoping to introduce you to some new tech. Tuesday or Thursday of next week, so I'm not going to give too much away. Hopefully it should start solving some of the issues. I'm keeping everything crossed, and we should hopefully introduce a few more cameras for you as well, so poor old Finn doesn't have to keep moving the camera around. We can just flick some switches. That will be next week. Fingers crossed. Apologies if it is a little bit hazy, grainy. All right, nothing I can do about it, I'm afraid. Any questions, Finn, before I start making a noise?
Not as of yet.
Okay. All right, let's get to our final shape. Then if you can stand to one side.
Okay.
It's difficult while you're asking questions as well, I know. I just don't want you in the way of that. There, I'm running there about 900 revs, and the reason I'm doing that, I'd like to go faster, but with the centrifugal forces, it'll probably rip that pot to pieces. So I'm just keeping it slow, and I'll just take some slower cuts. That's all. There, we're going to stop there. I'm going to clean the bottom up in a minute when we cut off and we flip it around. But I'm just going to part down there for the minute.
We just got a question here from Mark.
Yeah.
He was just saying the other day, or the other week even, you mentioned the match ring centres, friction drives.
Yeah.
He's just said he's ordered some, and he'd really appreciate it if you could cover them in a bit more detail. So what they're best for, any limitations, when they should be used, kind of thing.
Well, yes, absolutely. Now on Tuesday of next week, we're going to do some small projects. They're going to be, because of the time of year now, as makers we need to start making stuff for the festive season, so we're going to do some little decorations. And this is something that I used to do as project or practice pieces in beginner courses. I will do 3 or 4 different styles of Christmas tree. They're using the match centres, so we're going to play with those quite a lot on Tuesday. We're also going to look at some different tools. We're going to go for skew chisels, spindle gouges, parting tools, and just do a different variety. So you can get all your online craft fairs at the moment. There's not that many face-to-face craft shows or fairs, but shops, galleries, all those sorts of things. If you want to start making some money from your turning, they're quite nice little festive practice pieces, basically. So yes, the ring centres are going to be used on that. Right, I'm just going to stop there. I just want to check the timber because I felt a knock, and yes, look, there's a big bark inclusion there, so I think I'm going to stop for the minute, and we're going to cut that one off, flip it over, rather than it suddenly fly off and the whole thing be ruined. Let's stop now and cut it off. I'll use a Japanese pull saw. I can just put my mask down for the minute. We use a Japanese pull saw. I'm going to use this one. You've seen me use these before. Slightly bigger than my normal ones, but this is a bigger cut that I'm about to make. There's stone in there as well. That's what I've been encountering through this cut, through this pot. I don't want to ruin the sauce, so I'm just coming around the other side. There we are. Okay, so you can see that there. That's a little bit of bark inclusion. Now, that's going to throw up another thing. If you remember, this is the root ball. There's been a little bit of discussion recently about keeping pith in hollow forms and stuff like that. You can keep pith in there, but you've got to make sure, so basically the centre of the tree, you've got to make sure that your hollow form is then thin enough to move, rather than so thick that all it wants to do is it can't move, so it has to break at the weak point, which is the pith, and that's where you see those little classic splits radiating away from that centre point. That's not actually a centre point as much as one of those roots, individual roots coming out. They're all over the place on this one, so I'm fairly sort of confident that this is going to stay whole, even though it'll texture and it'll move quite a lot. I'm going to hand sand this later on, so once it's starting to dry a little bit, so that's why I'm not too worried at the moment. But there we are. Now that's, you can, I don't know whether you can see the inside.
It's quite dark.
Is it quite dark?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it.
That's better. You can see.
Yeah, you've got the sort of telltale signs or the tooling marks in there. Now if you want to blacken the inside with some blackboard paint, fine. I don't tend to bother. I'll wait until it dries. I'll give it a dust out with the blower. But let's make use of this scrap piece here. We're going to turn this over and drive it with that that piece of waste. I've already centered up the lathe, so make sure that the centers were both in line with each other, and that's really, really important when you're going to do this. Otherwise you get horrible sort of grating noises as the piece sort of goes off center every revolution. I haven't got a center point, so I'm going to guess one. I'm not too worried.
Christopher was just asking, are you able to sharpen the pull saw?
No. I don't whether you are able to sharpen a pull saw. I don't know. I certainly don't have the skill set to do that. I don't think they're made to be resharpenable. This is a replaceable blade. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint, that's the way that most of these type of saws go, and hand saws, general joinery saws, that sort of thing, have gone. I don't, as a company, I don't think we sell saw files anymore because of that. But no, these, you get the saw and then you can get spare blades when these go blunt. But I'll be honest, all my Japanese saws down there, I've never replaced the blade. I'm fairly careful with them, I have to say, so I don't go cutting things I shouldn't be cutting. Okay, so let's get this between centres. In fact, no, we need to turn that first, so we're going to just keep the pot close to us. We're going to turn a little, just a little raise in the middle. I want it to drive, but I also want it to, you know, be secure. And if you look at the split that we've got there, I can't put too much pressure on it, so I'm going to make a little cut for it to sit into. Put my glasses on. I can turn the speed up now. We can get a little bit faster. Let's just have a look and see where we are in terms of size wise. Of course, measuring is going to be much easier if you want to do that. I'm just speeding things up a little bit more off. And a taper. We don't want to try and get a snug fit. Just put a taper on. It saves a huge amount of time. Getting there now. I'd like it a little bit smaller than that, so I'd like it to go back to the back, this surface here. Any questions yet, Finn?
Not at the moment.
All good? Mm-hmm. There we are. Now, I don't know whether you can see down there. Can they see the join there, Finn? So I'm getting, it's nice, it's tight, and I'm almost back to the back of this bit of timber. Okay, so that's going to be nice and secure for me. So I'll just go straight ahead. You can put a little bit of tissue on. In fact, let's do that. That'll stop if the piece does stop all of a sudden, then it'll stop the burning as you get that wood on wood contact. So just a little bit of tissue. It's not quite, it's a little bit tight to get router matting in there, so I'm not going to do that. In fact, what I'm going to do is change that centre to the other ring centre that we were discussing earlier, only because the other ring centre is smaller than this, you see. This is quite big and lumpy. I don't want that much in the way. So we go to the live centre of the matched pair. Okay.
20 minutes in.
I would, if I'm doing a few of these, you know, this would be, I'll do all of these at the same time. So rather than keep dismantling the lathe, do all your hollowing out, wait until you've done all your pots, and then you're good to go. You reverse them all and do them all at the same time. Okay, that's in there. Good test to make sure that you've actually got a grip there is just try and rotate that on the joint. That's not rotating there, that's pretty stiff, so I know that's going to really work for me. There we are. I'm going to put my visor on again, only because we've got the whole thing rotating. Now it's entirely up to you what you do on the bottom. You've got to make sure it sits nice and stable. I want to take out the hole that this is left, but don't forget you can go through the bottom of a pot from this side as much as you can from the inside, so don't go too deep. A nice little flat base so we can put a name on there if we want to. I'm going to do a little bit more sanding now for you whilst we've got it held in there, and then we'll take that piece off. And I just want to get a bit of oil on it whilst you're watching, because it's such a really pretty bit of timber. And I'm not worried if you're thinking, oh, he hasn't sanded it yet. I've sanded it quite well, but I can sand it with oil on there. We can just make it wetter and sand the oil in. I mean, it's a really old technique, that, so why not? So I'm going to use just a little rotary sander to start with. We'll have the dust extractor going because we are going to produce some dust. This area here, haven't sanded at all yet, and obviously a little bit down here. It will gum up the paper. As it gets drier and drier, that will stop. So dust extraction is going on. So I'm just going to use a little bit of Abranet first. Abranet is the paper or the cloth which has the holes so you can see through it. And that's 120. I'll do that on the rotary set, on the power drill. And then I'll move to a 240, so I'm going up fairly rapidly in terms of abrasive. Let's just stop and have a look at that just to see what we've got. And that's coming on quite nicely already. A little bit more down here and then we can sort of start looking at that very bottom bit. It's a really nice piece actually. I'm just going to sand away a little bit of the old bark. And a little bit of hand sanding now, I think. go with a 240 grit.
Question here is just someone asking, does the Abranet come in 2 to 3 inch discs, or did you cut your own?
Well, I didn't on that piece. I was being lazy there. I was being lazy there, I just put a square on. Right, so I didn't even do that. I've got my Abranet in, it's actually that size, so it's for sanding blocks. So I'm not going to spend too long on the sanding. Well, let's go a bit coarser in there. No, I'm not going to spend too long on the sanding. I'm going to do a lot of hand sanding because it's wet timber. It just doesn't sand well. It gums up your paper. So I'll do a lot more sanding as it dries. So whilst I've been away, I'm hoping that everybody's had a go at the stool. Nice tall stool. We turned that away from, I purposely didn't want to refer to it as a milking stool. Not that many people have a cow at the bottom of their garden nowadays, so I thought let's make it a little bit longer, do the 18-inch legs. So it's a nice little stool for the workshop. So we done that one, and then we looked at the first part of this one. But before I went away, remember we done the party popper can, and that went down really well with everybody, and so I hope you have a go with that one. Plans are online. If you go to the video, you'll see them, the Facebook section of that video. You should see them on the comments section. We've got loads and loads of really cool things to be doing for the run up to Christmas. Lots of things to make. Some small projects, some really, really big projects, some several part projects. So we've got lots to do. And like I say, tech's going to be improving quite quickly now. So there, look what a lovely bit of timber. Now, we're going to get some oil on this. Just going to take that one off a minute. So if we just turn the extractor off. One of those things, root balls, you have to be in the right place at the right time, unfortunately. You can't just go to a timber yard and say, can I have a root ball, please? They're just not around. So this was a nice lucky little find. Oh, it found me, actually. Right, nice and careful as we come out. There, I'll give that a little bit of a hand sand there, but it's not too much of a problem. So far, that's what we have. So let's just swap our chucks, take a bit of that base away. You can choose to keep that, throw it away, whichever. So I'm going to put a little sanding disc on there. You've seen me do this plenty of times when we're reversing bowls around. Little carving chisel would work well here. I don't have one, so we're just going to sand this bit away. If you want to pair off this little nib with a carving chisel, you can. Just be really careful. You don't want to be putting your hand in front of the carving chisel when you're carving. Pair away from yourself. But we'll just sand this away for the minute. It's going to be a little bit tougher than it should be, only because of the course abrasive disc. I can find one.
Someone's just asking what jaws were they?
Which ones?
I believe
the ones I've just used to holding. They were the Dove G. Let me get them a minute. I want to show you those. So what we're holding here is, or what we're using here is a little engineering chuck. What we used to call the precision chuck, engineering jaws in. Oh, that's a better one. Sorry, not seeing everyone around. The jaws that I was using to hold the main pot, though, they were G's. And hollow forms, I tend to use G's or H's. That's what we would call a set of G's, grippers. Got a little serrated edge on the inside. Nice large dovetail for big platters on the outside, though. And then a set of H's. They're the same. They're, again, it's a gripper section on 3 surfaces. So right in the middle, internal surface, external surface. So you see either, any of those. That was using these, and then obviously the bigger pieces for the G's. So all I'm going to do, I'll put the extractor back on again because we're going to make a bit of dust. Just take off that bottom, and I want to make that grain then jump by putting some oil on. A little bit of speed. Running at 15. This is 100 grit I've got on here.
Which O'Donnell jaws do you need for an SK100 chuck?
Well, you can use whichever ones, because they'll all fit the SK100. So you've just got to ask yourself which are going to be the best size for you. What suits your style of turning? My personal favourite are the middle size, the 38s, and I tend to go with those rather than a set, because you go for a set. You have the external size of the 50 mils, and then you have inserts to go inside that. If you go for the individuals, you'll have this pitch down much smaller. So you can see on the 38s here, it's nice, it's out of the way, it's nice and clean, so nothing to get in the way. Those are my favourites at the moment. I tend to keep those on one of the chucks because I use it an awful lot. It's a good dovetail size for me. Just gone to a finer disc there, so we're up to 240. There we are, right. So what I'd like to do now for you, Finn, if you could just pan back a little bit. This is a really short day for you guys. I feel like I'm doing you out of stuff here. But that's the pot finished. Well, I say finished. What we can do now, I'll probably wait 3 or 4 days, let the outside surface dry a little bit, and then give it a bit of a hand sand as well. So for hand or the rotary sander, just in my lap sort of thing, sanding away if there's any areas that need to be. I'm going to put some oil on it for you now, just to let that grain jump out. But one thing I'd like to show you, it is thin, and it's important with these, they need to be fairly light. You can see the light coming through in a lot of places. A few thin areas, a few places that I just escaped. Nice little glow at the top there. All the knots come through as a nice colour. So we are fairly thin, but we saved it, and it's a really pretty timber, that one. So let's get some. What oil should we put on? Let's put
just a quick question.
Yeah.
Ian was just asking. So what jaws did you use for the dowel when making the Cannon plunger?
Remember, I think it was these. But your options. So these are the step jaws. and what we refer to as step jaws. That's the internal step jaw. Alternatively, you can go with a set of these. Okay, they're not black anymore, they're silver. Okay, well they're stainless steel anyway. But these are pin jaws, designed to be used with natural edge bowls, that sort of thing. But those, they close down to 0. Okay, so they'll be good for all your small turnings, or if you prefer going with something like I've got there. The only issue I would say with these, be aware that they've got sharp corners, and you get your knuckles on them, they will really hurt. Those don't have sharp corners. Okay, so it's up to you. I've been brought up with those from an apprentice. It's what we used to use, so doesn't mean to say it doesn't catch me every now and again, but okay, Finn's going to be going in a minute, I think, but we're going to finish in a minute as well. So maybe come a bit closer now, Finn. Let's have a look at this grain jump out as we put this on. It's always the best bit for me. You can see how stunning that is. Probably brush it on really rather than rag it on, but same effect. What cherry seems to do as well, the bark, the cadmium layer, so that layer just underneath the bark, the pithy bit, that will go quite red when you leave it before it dries. It'll die back again after it's dried, but now this is going to help replace some of that sap that we're losing as well, so help to stabilise it. Not completely, so don't expect just by putting oil on it you're going to stop it from cracking. It won't, but it will certainly help. So I'm going to leave that. Look at the grain on there. Beautiful bit of timber. The grain's running all over the place because it's a root ball, so you think about those individual roots sort of coming away. I'll leave that for a couple of days. I'll come back, I'll re-sand it by hand, and then put a few more coats of oil on, and that will be that one finished. There we go. All right, Finn, if you could come back for me. Excellent. A really quick day, that one. I knew it was going to be fairly good. I spent a lot of time on this piece this morning, but I hope you've enjoyed that one. There's in terms of hollow forms, there's it's almost a subdivision of wood turning in itself. To do the main hollowing out, I tend to go for woodcut proform or the Axminster carbide tip ones. They're a good combination with each other. And if you haven't done any hollow forms before, stick small. You don't have to go massive straight away. There's just some examples. We've got some really dinky little things here. Some little tiny hollow forms, or you can go right up to the big ones once you've got a little bit more practice under the belt, sort of thing. Drilling out the centre of them really helps before you start hollowing, and enjoy it. That's the main thing. Wet turning is definitely the way to go for a hollow form. Again, if you've never done it before, have fun. So next week we're doing some Christmas tree decorations. So we're back into my favourite season, and it's the start of many Christmas projects. Like I say, some spread over a couple of sessions, some just single ones. So keep your questions coming in, guys. I've got a huge backlog of questions to answer over the next few days. It's what happens when you have a little bit of time off. So I'm going to get to you all. We will get those questions sorted, and by Tuesday we should be back online again. So, like I say, until then, have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy your turning, whatever you're doing, and I'll see you on Tuesday in my workshop, 4 o'clock. Thank you very much.